Hello, thank you for joining us for SMAX user group today. Happy New Year from the MicroFocus team. This is the first session of the year, and it's a spotlight on service level management. With me, I have Pete Budick and Steve Anderson. Pete will go over the recent updates, recent capabilities added for service level management, and Steve is also here for the discussion part. So if you are here, you're obviously familiar, but just a quick reminder, we have three types of sessions: feature spotlight, like the one today, doing a deep dive on a specific capabilities; release readiness, where we present and review an upcoming release and the capabilities new in the release; and then office hours for open discussions and opportunity to engage with product experts and share feedback. You have two ways to connect to the session, if usually using the computer's audio, but if you have issues and you'd like to come off mute and your audio on the computer doesn't work, you have the option to call using the telephone number here and the access code. The same information is available with your invite. So for today, as mentioned, we have the SLM updates, but before that, we'll just do a quick update on the latest patches. So we switched since last time. We obviously have the 2022-11, so we'll just cover now the patches on 2022-11 and then 05. So patch 1 for 11 has been released just before the holidays. It contains a number of defect fixes and 1 ER for SMAX customers, and then there are 5 mixed mode defect fixes. In terms of the deployment with the patch, you also have an audit patch for the audit capabilities, and then as well the CMS containerized to go with it. No changes on the 05, the patch 5, we covered it in the last update as well. And with that, I'm handing this over to Pete for an SLM update.
All right, thank you, Brandusha. So yeah, we're going to discuss today the changes to the service level targets with the new release, and the big overarching theme is the configurability for service level targets. So quite simply, the service level targets for request and incident are now configurable. Before those rules were read-only, now the business rules are editable. Chat response rules are still read-only because they are tightly bundled with the live chat function. Also, studio apps are now configurable using business rules. And one addition of change management now has configurable SLTs available. And we'll get into all these in a lot more detail. Just wanted to give a high level at this point. The configurable pieces that have been added include configurable rules for start, stop, suspend, and unsuspend operations. All the configurable out-of-box rules for request, incident, and change. And now there are configurable and customizable target types. Go to the next slide. Yeah. So what can you do now? Big ones are create completely new target types. Whoop. So you're not stuck, or not stuck, but not held to the target types that come in the out-of-box system. You can create completely new target types and then configure all the actions such as start, stop, suspend, unsuspend around these target types for both new and existing, for both the new ones and existing target types via the business rules. And again, we can now modify the out-of-box business rules for incident and request and the new change target types through the Studio Editor. So talking a bit about change management can now have support agreements assigned. You will see change has been added to the target set module drop-down list. And there were modifications made to enable this under SLTs that you'll see in the system. So you have, again, the SLT settings have been added to change inside of Studio. There's a target section that's been added to the detailed form on the change forms. The SLT next target time has been added to the grid view. Notification templates have been added that can be used for the change target sets. And the new target types have been added, such as classification, which you'll see when we get to the list in a second. Now, this does bring some upgrade considerations for change. Because the workflow rules are now editable, they are not automatically added during the upgrade. So if you have an existing SMAX system and upgrade, the target sets will not be applied automatically until those rules are manually added to the change workflow. There's documentation on how to do that, but these rules must be manually added because the workflow rules are editable. The crawling upgrade will manage existing target set records by setting default values in this new target type field. So that'll be handled without any manual steps. There are some little intricacies. The impact field is not mandatory for change out of the box. So in that case, the priority can be empty. And so because we target a lot of these, or I'm sorry, the definition for the target sets are around the priority, the target status would be not defined because there's no default priority in the target definition. So just things to consider when you're upgrading. If you always want that target set applied, you could do some rules to make sure there is a priority set, but in a lot of cases, there's not in the out-of-box system.
Yeah. And maybe one comment about the manually added rules. While yes, you have to manually add, you still can use that diff mode in the workflow that allows you to see what's out of the box and just copying them over, so you don't have to type these rules one by one.
Correct. Thank you.
Okay.
So we'll take a look at how a customized target type is defined. So you do this in the target type list. One thing to be careful of is there's actually two with the display name target type. So you want to do the one that has also the name target type, not the measurement target type. That's one mistake that would cause that not to show up. And you can see that on the out of the box list that we do have the new target types for change management, validation, deployment, classification, and planning. So those can be used just with the out-of-box settings. You don't have to add new ones for those. If you do add a new setting, such as the first touch on the bottom, it will be suffixed with the _C to keep those removed or separated from the out-of-the-box values. All right. The chat response is now part of the target type selections for requests. So there used to be a checkbox for the chat response. You'll see that is now gone, and it will be as part of the target types. So if you were using that, that's the change there. The time and group option will only be available in the OLAs, and it will actually be the only selectable option in that new target types field. Right. Other changes, just that to point out, there used to be an initialize rules button. So this screenshot is from the older system. When using a custom entity type, that has been removed. You no longer will need to initialize rules. The rules will be picked up the next time they are triggered by the entity workflow. So it no longer goes and applies these to all the existing records. Just the rules, if you change them, will be picked up the next time they are triggered. So just know this when you're adding new target types, they will not be assigned automatically. It will have to be the next time the business rules are triggered. Right. When you're adding target types to an existing SLT, the administrator will be prompted to add the target definitions and rules for the new target types. So we are not doing this automatically. You'll see the message that pops up. You'll need to make sure the related target definition and rules are properly defined or removed. So when you're removing target types, the associated business rules are not removed automatically. The type will be disassociated from any records, so they won't be running those target types anymore, but these rules will still be in the workflow. They'll run and do nothing, so you'll want to take those out. And tickets will force any target type timer to stop automatically if there's no associated target type in the SLT. But just a reminder that all the business rules will have to be removed manually. Okay. Other changes, I like this one, the SLT history. The target status has been added, so you can see whether it's active, when this step happened, what was the status, whether it was active or achieved, breached or failed. So you can actually see that within the target, the SLT history on a ticket now, which is quite helpful. Okay. Notification settings, this is one that can cause a little confusion, so I want to clear up. There aren't any changes to the existing settings UI. So rules that are available for custom target types have to be handled in the business rules. You can't turn off the out-of-the-box email notification for a custom target type in the studio. In the SLT settings in the studio. You will have to use the business rules to do that. You can still do this on the out-of-the-box. So in this example, the initial review, resolution, time, and group targets, you can turn them on and off. But if you create a new target new target type, you will have to make sure you have the rules correct in the workflow on whether or not to send email notifications. Okay. So this is, let's take a look at the actual new configurable SLT rules. So there's an execute SLT operation rule type that has been added. And it again allows for the starting, stopping, suspending, or unsuspending of the service level target. These rules are available for the entering, leaving, and after change events inside the workflow. So again, you'll see all the editable rules have been created for request and incident to replace existing read-only rules. The read-only rules have been removed, and we have editable rules in their place, so you can make changes to them now. And rules have been added to change, but there weren't any rules for that before. So again, you can see that you have an example here that starts the SLT. This is actually on the ticket creation. So you have the SLT operation, so either the start, stop. So inside the rule, you can specify what the action is. In this case, we're starting the SLT, but this can also be for stop, suspend, and unsuspend. And then the next step is to specify which SLT types. You can either do all SLT types, or in this case, we're starting for specific types, which is the initial review, resolution, and time and group. So if you are adding a new target type, you have two options. You can either create a new rule that starts it, or does any of the actions, or if you're starting, especially in this case where you're starting on a new ticket creation, if you wanted to start your type there, you could just add it to the list of SLT types to start and stop. I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself. I'm not sure exactly where. Oh, sorry.
Oops. Should I go back?
Did we get to where in the workflow? Did I say that which steps you could do the entering, leaving, and after change events?
Yes. Yeah. You
Okay.
covered that.
Okay,
Yeah.
we got that part. Okay, great. So we can go forward. Yeah. Sorry about that. And this is a relatively larger change. Is inside a new target set, you can now have specific business rules for the specific target set. So you can have, if you're familiar with service offerings, where you can have rules inside those, it's very similar. So you can now have specific business rules when entering for the after change or a specific SLT event. These business rules can run either before or after the general business rules. So if this is a target set for incident in this case, these can run before or after the actual incident rules. And so one option is for a specific type of target or a target set, if it's running maybe just for one new kind of target type, you can have all the logic added here. So you see in this example, we actually have the logic for starting the target set and stopping the target set inside these rules specifically. It does keep the main workflow cleaner, easier to debug. The kind of con here is that now it's a little harder to see everything that is affecting the incident. So these rules are not in the studio workflow. They're actually part of the target set, which can cause some confusion. Again, if you've worked with the offering business rules, you've probably run into this before. It can be very helpful, but sometimes can cause confusion. So one of the things R&D has said is if it is for more than one target type, it should always be in the main process workflow, such as incident. But if you're doing something for a very specific target type, I just use the first touch as an example here. that has no effect on the rest of the workflow, no effect on any of the other SLT types, you could put it inside the target set rules. All right. If we can go to the next slide. So the important thing in debugging here then is to know the order of operations. So the way it would run, if you were in request, you have offering rules. So the offering rules would run the before rules. After that, the specific SLT before rules would run, and then the request or incident workflow rules. For the after then, the offering after rules would run, and then the SLT after rules. So again, because you're adding some complexity here by putting rules in a different place, much as we did with offering, but there's also a lot of positives there in terms of having specific rules for specific cases, but knowing the order of operations will be very important. One thing that helps there is then to review the SLT actions in the debugger to ensure all the conditions are evaluating as expected. Things to look for are ensuring that you have the correct action type. So if you're trying to stop, it'd be the stop SLT target is what we're seeing here in the example below, but making sure that the correct action type is being triggered. And again, the order of operations. So if you have offerings, they run in the SLT, the entity rules, then the offering and the SLT. But using the debugger can be very helpful in making sure that what you have planned to run for the SLT is actually running. And some things you can see is if any operation that is run by a specific SLT rule is actually in any kind of interference with the overall entity rules. All right. Finish up just some tips and recommendations. And again, this is from R&D. If you're not doing very specific rules, it's probably easier to manage those SLT rules in the studio workflow rather than the new target set records, because it affects all records where the target type is applied. So really, the one time it might be more useful is if you have a target set, which is the only one that is using a specific target type. Because again, those target set rules are based on the specific target set. So if you have a target type in multiple target sets and only one of those target sets is running some additional rules, it can become a little complicated. Now, the other reason that they recommend it is the workflow rules are supported by the dev to prod process. Well, currently the target set rules are not. So if you were to move the target set into from development to production, you would have to manually add the rules to the target set again. Other little tips, if you have an entering event, if you only want this entering event to run once for a metaphase, so even if there's a phase change if you have multiple phases within one metaphase, but you only want a SLT rule to run once, so the first time it enters that metaphase, you can add a rule condition, which is the current update metaphase is changed. So again, that would only happen when the metaphase is changed and not for all the phase changes within a phase. So that can be very helpful for SLT rules. The third one, so target types for change are now visible for all three processes, the emergency, normal, and standard workflows. And the processes are mapped to a single change target set under support agreements. So the difference in each workflow is created in the actual rules within those three processes. So you won't, just try and point out that you won't see any differences in the way the target set is defined, but because the rules are processed in the change workflow, you'll want to look at the specific workflow for each process if you're trying to change the way, or if you want to see how those change SLTs are launched and changed. And then there's, excuse me, we have some tips for custom target types. We'll just leave the link here for in terms of adding rules for a custom target type and how those work. And again, it goes over what we talked about, which is the order of operations, because that's just going to be the most important thing in terms of debugging and figuring out where each of those phase change or SLT targets are done.
Okay. And I think this is the last slide, right?
Yes, luckily, because it just told me I lost audio.
Right, now we can hear you, yeah. Good.
Okay.
Okay. So I guess would be a good time to open for questions. Let me unmute everybody. So you can come off your individual mute and ask. Steve, any questions in the question manager we would like to bring up? And you're on. Yeah.
I have a question which may not be related to this because we are using SMAX and we are using all kind of request. Now the problem what we are facing is that whenever the request has been assigned to the expert group, okay, we need a reporting on that so that we can easily figure out that okay, how many cases has gone through with this particular group. Suppose a case is going through multiple department, okay, and we as a specific department, we need to know that how many requests we have handled in a given time frame. So we don't have any mechanism because let's suppose if in the expert assignment field, if we assign our group name and then if we change it to something else, then we don't have any mechanism to find out that how many tickets we have handled. So can you help me understand if there is any way we can do that?
So you want to know? So yeah, we'll just take this one quickly, and then we'll go back to the main topic of this presentation. So you want to get how many requests have been assigned to a group at some point in time, or or
may be able to use OLAs. So if
Right.
you define OLTs, then it'll create a time in group each time it's
Right.
assigned. Each time the request is assigned to that group,
Yep.
and then you may be able to do some reporting against the OLT table. I'd have to think through it fully, but that's where I would start looking at.
OLT table. Okay.
Yeah, using OLTs to give you some visibility into how long it's assigned to each group. Because it may be interesting also to know how long it's assigned. If it was misassigned and it's only assigned for a couple of seconds, that maybe you don't want to count that because it wasn't truly assigned. It was a user error type thing. You could catch ones that are only assigned very briefly and count those differently.
Got it. Thank you. I'll ask my team to check for the OLT table.
Yeah. If anybody else on the call has an idea on how you've addressed that in other cases, you could speak up. Otherwise, we can go back to SLT and let's try to keep the questions right now focused on SLM and the changes there. I expect since we're only half an hour into the session, we'll probably have some time for open Q&A at the end. But let's try to get through any SLM questions people have first. All right.
Steve, anything in the chat?
A couple questions here. So there's one related to the removal of target types. And if you go back to slide 14, that's the one that we're referencing here. So there was a question about when you remove a target type, will we automatically remove the business rules that are associated at some point in the future? Maybe we'll look at it. But one thing I wanted to note is that if you create a custom target type and then define some business rules for it, and then you decide, I don't want that target type, or I'm making some change to it, and you remove that target type, then you'll need to go and remove any rules that you've configured related to that target type. So this is a lot dealing with rules that will have been created by customers or people in implementers working for the customer. So I haven't fully evaluated it, but I doubt we'd be able to automatically clean this up. I think this is going to be part of the implementer's job when they're making these kind of changes to go through and make sure that they've adjusted everything related to the target type. And then there's a question around dev to prod and whether we may look at moving target set rules as part of dev to prod in the future. Yes, we're evaluating expansions to dev to prod. We'll have to look at this. The target set rules are part of the target set right now. We don't move target sets. Those are typically configured right on prod. So if at the point that we expand dev to prod to SLM records, then it would move those rules as well, but we don't have definitive plans on that. If you're interested in it, submit an idea or vote on one. I don't remember if there's one for that in idea exchange or not off the top of my head. But you could search and find it if one exists out there. Anyone else have questions?
Okay, yes, there are no other questions, so maybe we can, I guess, open up for more generic questions people may have.
Yeah, definitely. If yeah, so we can kind of transition to office hours. Happy New Year, everyone. Thank you for joining the new series on the user group. And if you have any questions you'd like to raise, now is a good time to do that. While we're waiting for questions, do you have a slide at the end for upcoming sessions?
Yes, I do. So yeah, 2 weeks from now, we have another spotlight session on service modeling. And then the session after, we'll take a break from presentations and we'll have an office hour.
And we're always interested in both topics that you'd like to see covered in these user group sessions. If there's a particular area you think would be good to have covered, you can go ahead and send us a note on that. And we're especially always interested in guest presenters. If you have something you've done with SMAX that you think is interesting to this group and you'd like to present it, please reach out to us. We'd love to discuss that and potentially have you on as a guest presenter. All right, I don't see any questions and no one's coming off mute. Did we unmute everyone? Well, somebody spoke, so we must have unmuted.
Yes, I did.
Okay. Great. Thank you, Pete, for presenting on the service level management changes. And I think we can wrap up for today.
Yeah, thank you very much. And we'll
about
see
a half
you
hour
next time.
back in their busy schedules. Thank you.
Thank you.